Auto companies have seen record profits, including the last few years, because of the extraordinary skill and sacrifices of the UAW workers. But those record profits have not been shared fairly, in my view, with those workers.
So they've not been shared fairly. The other thing that President Biden did was pretty big move, sending a White House advisor, Gene Sperling, also acting Labor Secretary Julie Su, to Detroit to help reach a deal. That's a huge move coming from the executive branch. Su and Sperling's goal was not to serve as mediators or intervene, but to help support the negotiations in any way the parties feel is constructive, which is interesting, right? They're not trying to put the squeeze on one or the other, but just sort of there, saying they're watching. And Senator, to your point earlier, another president weighed in, former president, about this strike. Barack Obama, who oversaw that massive bailout of the automakers. And he writes on Twitter, 14 years ago, when the big three automakers were struggling to stay afloat, my administration and the American people stepped in to support them. So did the auto workers in the UAW, who sacrificed pay and benefits to help the companies get back on their feet. Now that car makers are enjoying robust profits, it's time to do right by those same workers so the industry can emerge more united and competitive than ever. Now, it is true, they did make concessions, but it's also, when that happened, and I don't know if you remember, the narrative was, we have to do this. This is the backbone of America. But the workers are the backbone of what is the backbone of America, not Mary Barra and like her record profits and her record, salaries. So it's interesting because you could almost see it then that this moment was going to come later. But thoughts, Senator?
Yeah, I mean, they could have at least minimally, I mean, the UAW is asking for 40%. They could have at least offered them that 32% that she received, just minimally. Right. I mean, they should get their 40, but if they really wanted to play ball, they could say, we're gonna offer your workers what Mary got in percentage, but they won't do that. As for President Biden, look, I'm glad that he has finally said something. I mean, he went from praising the CEOs of these auto companies to finally telling us what we already know. So I'm not cutting a lot of slack on that. And then for President Obama, pretty much the same thing. Let's see them both get out on the picket line with these workers, really shake it up. Let's see them, let's hear reports of how they called the automakers in, not sending folks under them to go have these conversations, but they calling them in, asking them, what in the hell are you doing? You are hurting working class people in this country. And as Senator Bernie Sanders once said, since we're gonna have class warfare, it's time for the working class to be able to win that. And then Francesca, there's one thing about that, how President Fain really put this in perspective. He said the cost of labor that goes into a vehicle is 5% of the vehicle. They could double our wages, and they could not raise the price of vehicles, and they could still make billions of dollars. Now, this is coming from President Fain about what would happen to the big three if they shared the earned wealth with these workers, because they're not asking for anything that they don't deserve for the people in the cheap seats. Because Franny, it burns my behind. And I want to say something else, but I know it's a PG show. It burns my behind to have so many people, especially on social media. Well, Dag, what do you expect them to do? And how you lining up behind the billionaire class? Why are you not lining up behind your sisters and brothers and family and friends who are actually making these vehicles? They are just like us. And guess what? Ununionized workers or non-unionized workers benefit when unionized workers put it on the line. All workers benefit from them making this demand. But there's some geniuses out there who feel as though workers are asking for too much, but they are okay with people like Mary and others making obscene amounts of money, whether the company does well or not. Because when the company is not doing well, workers get laid off. When the company is doing well, workers don't get to reap in the benefits. What in the unholy hell?
Yeah, no, exactly. And look, we're seeing all this strike activity and union activity, but we have to remember that unionization in this country is still on the decline, sadly. And yet, it's so important to have leaders, not just Bernie Sanders, obviously, but people like President Sean Fain, who are having these just incredible viral moments in the media and calling out the consumers, like you just read, right? We can actually support the consumers by not raising the price on you all. We understand we're each on either side of this getting screwed over by corporations and also by these shareholders. And the idea that it's not about not making things anymore. It's about only making wealth for shareholders and the top 1%, right? Like that's what it is. If we did away with the middlemen trying to make money off everyone's backs, we'd all be good. We'd be good.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.